got John McMullen and Jody McDonald, your Mac guys here on Birds 365. We're lucky enough to get Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports, CBSSports.com, to jump in with us. Kerr, I'm going to ask you one question that has absolutely nothing to do with football first. And let me readily admit, my area of expertise is now 40-plus years old. The last time I bowled on a regular basis, grade school. Every once in a while in high school, but I'm going back to grade school. When is the best time of year to bowl? Oh, is he freezing up on us? I asked him
he's frozen.
Out of left field.
He looks so real.
He does.
It's frozen.
He looked like he was contemplating my question, giving it great thought before he answered it. You're unfrozen now, Kerr. When is the best time of year to bowl?
The best time of year, it's the winter. It's definitely not the summer because
Why?
I haven't had a good summer bowling in about 7 years.
You're tying it all to yourself. I'm going to be a more open-minded individual. I say summer for one very important reason, and you'll explain this, I hope. You walk into a bowling alley, and it is cold. It is just naturally cold. If you're wearing a short-sleeve shirt, you walk into the bowling alley, and you go like this. I'm guessing they need to do that to keep the lane, the type of roll that they want on it. I just love coming out of the nice hot heat outside and coming into a overly air-conditioned bowling alley. Am I just making this? I'm telling you, it's 40 years ago, so I might just be dreaming this crap. But tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not. So the only thing is when you bowl, the approach has to be good. Because if you're wearing bowling shoes and you stick, forget it. You ain't scoring. You ain't doing anything. So yeah, they have to keep it insanely cold. I actually wear long pants when I bowl in the summer. And in the winter, obviously you're dressing warm, but it feels nice when you go in the winter. But in the summer, I don't know. I prefer the heat, but that's just me.
I like the cool.
I got a ball to Ernie McCracken here. That's who I take all my bowling advice from, and maybe Nick Biero and Jeff Kerr. So I got
Nick's got a PBA Tour card here.
Yeah,
you got to remember that.
Yeah. So I don't know much except Ernie McCracken.
Right, but what did Ern prefer? Since you're going to quote Ernie McCracken, was he a winter guy or a summer guy, McMullen?
That was Bill Murray in the movies. So
I know who Ernie McCracken is. Yes,
yeah.
Maybe the worst.
I don't think they addressed it, but they did have the guy who had his own track. I forget that character's name. He made it very cold for a reason. We can't talk about that on a family show. If you remember the movie, he made it very cold for a reason. So. And it wasn't bowling related. I shall say that.
Understood.
Yeah. I'll just say this as a bowler, someone who needs to have really good eyesight, and I normally do. I hate the summer bowling. One, because of allergy. It is allergy season for me. And two, I just don't bowl well in the summer because I'm working on my game for the fall. So
okay, all right,
all right.
I apologize for getting us off course. Jeff Kerr. Eagle quarterback rankings heading into the 2023 season off what they did and what you're projecting them to do this year. Give us your top 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks, the Jeff Kerr ranking of quarterbacks going into the NFL season 2023.
Well, Mahomes is 1. I'd probably go Burrow 2. This is where it gets tough. I probably would go Hurts 3 based off last year. Probably go Josh Allen 4. Yeah, there's always going to be someone I'm missing here. You're putting me on spur of the moment.
Yeah, I am. I'm putting you on the spot here, buddy.
Yeah,
I got pressurized summer bowling.
Most people will throw out, where are you going to have Rodgers? Where are you going to have Herbert?
Exactly.
Where are you going to have Lamar?
Yeah, I think
those are the more difficult ones.
I think on talent alone, I actually would put Rodgers 5. I'd probably put Herbert 6. So that's a good one. That gets really. I think Trevor Lawrence would be 7 right now.
I had a Lamar.
Trevor Lawrence getting a lot of love. I love the guy. Jody knows. Tremendous prospect. But I think people are skipping steps with Trevor Lawrence a little bit.
I think they are too.
He went mano a mano with Herbert in the playoffs last year, and one guy walked up a 24-point lead.
He had a great run. I think Doug is doing a wonderful job. I think the biggest idiot in the world. Press Taylor's doing a wonderful job, who all of a sudden got smart again. And I'm being facetious. I hope people realize I think the Eagles did him a disservice, but I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he's going to be even better, but I think there's still some development is all I'm trying to say.
Last year was pretty much like a rookie year for Trevor Lawrence because of the Urban Meyer
Yeah,
fiasco.
he probably got set back by Urban Meyer. That probably hurts.
But back to your Lamar thing. I mean, I've seen some people have him in the top 5. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, he's a former MVP. He's still a really good quarterback. It's just he's hurt a lot, but the numbers don't. I don't like when people say wins aren't a quarterback stat because in theory they kind of are. The Ravens are 45-16 when he plays. That when he starts, they're 45-16.
Yeah, there's certain guys like. I agree for the most part in the other direction that wins are not a quarterback stat, except when they are. If you have consistent success, like Lane Johnson at right tackle. Well, in theory, wins losses shouldn't be a right tackle stat, but they are for the Eagles because when he's out there, they stink and win, and when he's not, they tend to have problems. So I think it's on a case by case basis. The guy who took a hit for me, not from a talent perspective, he's probably number 2 from a talent perspective. But the guy who took a hit from me last year was Josh Allen. Too many mistakes, too reckless. I've knocked him down a little bit in the offseason. He's a guy, now he can fix it. I mean, he's incredibly gifted. But he took a little bit. So if I'm going to disrespect anybody in that top tier group, it's probably going to be Josh Allen.
And I think it's fair because of the turnovers. You can't get on Dak Prescott for turnovers and not mention Josh Allen, who had, was tied with Prescott, I think, for the most interceptions in football. My defense of Josh Allen, at least from the turnovers, is the Bills had a terrible offensive line. People don't want to admit they had a terrible offensive line last year, but they did. And I don't think their running game was that great. I thought James Cook was their best running back last year, and now he's going to be the feature back. I was not a fan of Devin Singletary at all. I actually like the fit in Houston a lot more than I did in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, and Trevor, I think there is that drop off after Trevor to me. So if we all agree that Mahomes, should be 1, obviously, but then you have Burrow, Josh Allen, the Herberts, the Rodgers, Lamar's, Jalen Hurts. So then you have a drop off to Trevor Lawrence, and then you have another drop off to whomever you think might be the next one. Pretty significant drop off. So I think Trevor belongs up there. I just don't think he's in that top 6-7 group.
Yeah.
Where do we go like Dak Prescott here? I still say he's top 10.
Well, I think he's in the conversation to be 9 or 10. If you have 8 really good quarterbacks, I think if you put him at 9, I wouldn't argue with you. But I think he's a little bit below.
But I think it's getting hard for a certain fan base to admit that Dak Prescott will probably never be a top 5 quarterback.
Who did PFF have after those guys? So they had, I'm trying to look it up. So they had Mahomes 1, Josh Allen 2. I think that's too high. Joe Burrow 3. I put him at 2. Herbert at 4. I love Herbert. I'm in the bag for Herbert, so I have no problem with that.
He was coached by the worst offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I don't like the situation. Hopefully Kellen Moore helps him out. Aaron Rodgers, Jody knows. That guy's unbelievable. Lamar, Jalen, Trevor Lawrence. Then I have Cousins 9 and Prescott 10. So that's where you're at in that 9-10 range. I have no problem with that. I'd probably put Prescott ahead of Cousins, but that's about right, I think.
I don't think Daniel Jones should be ranked higher than Dak Prescott, which
doesn't
seem to be a thing.
No, that's absurd.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts ran for more touchdowns last year than Daniel Jones threw. Think about that.
You know who I might put in that conversation, who I think is underrated because of the start of his career and maybe the end in Los Angeles, Jared Goff. I put him in that conversation.
I think Goff deserves at least a top 10 consideration. He definitely has not been. He's been good in Detroit. I'll say it. He's been good.
Yeah,
And he's got.
I don't know. People have problems saying that. I don't know why. He's solid. He's not great, but he's a good quarterback.
I'll tell you the guy who I think is being disrespected on a lot of these lists, and I get it because he was hurt last year, but being hurt didn't seem to diminish Lamar Jackson, but it did Matthew Stafford. We're only 1 year removed from him being the champion of the National Football League.
Well, you know me as well. I've always talked up Matthew. Some of that is age as well with me. But you're right. If he's healthy.
Didn't get you from keeping Rodgers in the top 5, did it, John?
No, but Rodgers is different. I mean, I've always liked Matthew Stafford. But Rodgers,
what do Rodgers and Matthews have in common? One Super Bowl championship apiece.
But one's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And Matthew Stafford's a very good quarterback that people have underrated for many years. But one's,
including
are you going to dismiss
into this year, in my opinion?
Are you going to dismiss Dan Marino because he's got 0? And I'm not going to say, Matthew Stafford or even most guys who won Super Bowls aren't in the Marino category. Most guys who won Super Bowls aren't in the Rodgers category. Those guys are top 10 all time.
Here's my point. And you guys were just throwing out Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff. Yeah, that's who I'm comparing the one championship that Matthew Stafford has to those guys who have none. Dan Marino. Yeah, he takes it to another level. You wouldn't compare Goff or Cousins or Dak Prescott to Marino, would you? No.
No.
Not. So,
and I wouldn't compare him to Rodgers, which is why I don't. That's what I was trying to say. I don't compare him to Rodgers. Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks who ever lived. Those guys aren't in the conversation with him.
He's got three MVPs. Matthew Stafford's only made 1 Pro Bowl, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. He didn't make more as an alternate.
According to Pro Football Reference, he's only made 1, and it was one of his worst statistical seasons. Because I was doing the duos list for CBS, like who'd be my best duo on each team, and I went Stafford and Kupp. I was looking up Stafford's numbers from last year. I'm like, they're the worst since his Pro Bowl year. And then I look, that's his only Pro Bowl. I don't know how that happened.
I can't believe that because guys get there are years where the 8th best quarterback in the league makes the Pro Bowl because guys just go, yeah, no thanks, yeah, no thanks, yeah, no.
Tyler Huntley made the Pro Bowl last year. He only had 3 touchdowns.
It's ridiculous. Tyler Huntley's made as many Pro Bowls as Matthew Stafford, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, pretty much. Jalen Hurts has made as many Pro Bowls as Matthew Stafford.
I finally, by the way, this is arcane, but people might find it interesting because I've been meaning to ask this for years because Pro Bowl selections are a big deal when it comes to contracts. And, a lot of times incentives are based on Pro Bowl bursts. And I was always like, well, what about alternates? What about guys that, as Jody's saying, and you're Tyler Huntley? No, they don't count. They don't count. You have to be on the original list for incentives. So it is a little bit more meaningful to be on that original list. If you're an alternate, you're an alternate.
I think that's why we make such a big deal about the All Pros now, because of all the alternates in the Pro. Like going to the Pro Bowl used to be a really big deal. Now it's, okay, did you make the All Pro team?
Well, it's always been, did you make the All Pro team? Especially we have so many Hall of Fame. We're lucky enough to have so many Hall of Fame selectors on this show since we've done it, Jody. We had Jason Cole on yesterday. Those guys have always, when they debate Hall of Famers, they don't look at Pro Bowls. They're looking at all pro selections because, that means you're either the best 2 or 3 at your position on a particular year. And if you do that consistently, that means you're a pretty good player. So,
I mean, look at Jason Kelsey, for example. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He's got 5 All-Pro selections.
Oh, yeah.
5 first-team All-Pros.
Yeah.
I think there's only like 4 or 5 centers that have more than him, and they're all Hall of Famers. It's, Dermody Dotson, Mike Webster, those guys.
All right, Jeff Kerr, I didn't bring this up with Johnny Mack. We got off on a ranking and rating tangent. But good friend of all of ours, Ruben Frank, on his observations column, which I think hit yesterday at some point, pointed out where the Eagles can be improved this year. I see what he's saying, but I'm not sure that I agree with him. Eagles last year against the run. We know what their ranking was, and ranking is based on how many yards you give up per game. A more accurate way of rating a team against the run is probably yards per carry. Because last year, the Eagles got a whole bunch of halftime leads. They were this unbelievable second quarter team that dominated a lot of their opponents in the second quarter. So teams come out trailing in half, they run it less. So their total yards are going to be less, but their average per carry can be a better judgment of it. At 4.6 yards per carry, that was the fifth worst in the National Football League. Eagles against the run, fifth worst if you go by yards per carry. And Ruben's theory is the Eagles are going to be better against the run because they don't have Javon Hargrave anymore, who on Pro Football Focus rating against the run wasn't good at all. Now, he's great at tracking down the quarterback, getting sacks. A D tackle that gets double-digit sacks is huge. And, oh, by the way, the 49ers liked him enough to give him a massive contract. Will the Eagles be better against the run just because Javon Hargrave isn't in their defensive tackle mix?
I think the Eagles will be better against the run because Jordan Davis is going to be in there more than Javon Hargrave not being there. Because I remember when they signed Javon Hargrave, he was always an underrated pass rusher, but that's not what he was really asked to do in Pittsburgh. He was asked to play the nose more. So he was pretty solid against the run. But last year, they were fine against that until Jordan Davis had the foot injury. And then that led to the calamity in Houston and the loss against Washington, and Howie Roseman reacted and said, okay, Linval Joseph, the Dabakatsu, come on down. And it seemed to patch things up. And, it was almost like a leaky faucet. You just got the quick seal. That was it. Now you got a new pipe. So you got Jordan Davis back. I think that's going to significantly help. I think Milton Williams is a lot better against the run than people give him credit for. So I think that's going to...
Milton was here all 17 games last year, right?
Yeah, but how much was he... John, you would probably notice a lot better than me. Like, just from, watching the games, being at the games, I didn't take that much notice in Milton Williams the last 5-6 weeks of the season.
No, I thought Milton played well, especially in the second half, for what they're asking him to do. See, here's my problem with this discussion. They don't care, right? It's all light boxes. Like, if they were trying to stop the run, I would put more emphasis into it. Now, if you want to argue with the theory, the scheme, the philosophy, I'm with you. I'm 100%. I get people want to argue that. To expect this team, the way they play, to stop the run like they're, Pat Williams and Kevin Williams in their prime, and number one rush defense. Who was the number one rush defense? Tampa Bay, Vita Bay.
Yeah.
Three straight years. Minnesota, 3 straight years with the Williams wall. To expect them to stop the run like that, the way they play, is ludicrous.
So and that's not really a thing anymore either, like being the number one rush defense.
No. So, but if you want to criticize the philosophy, then I'll listen and I'll say, yeah, all right. Maybe they should pay more attention to stopping the run. But until they change the philosophy to expect guys. Now, where Rube's right, and I've said this for years, Javon Hargrave is not a good run defender. He is not. He's a great interior pass rusher, but he is not good against the run. Where it really showed up is year one under Nick Sirianni, where they didn't have that player. They didn't have that nose tackle, that shade technique, even though Javon played it, and he played it in Pittsburgh, not good at it. Cam Hayward was better.
Cam Hayward's the underrated stud of the Pittsburgh defense.
But he's not good at it. He's a good pass rusher. But their whole thing is math, right? +1, +1, +1 on offense. The +1 on defense is get another guy in coverage. Well, when you get another guy in coverage, you're always playing these light boxes and you're going to give up these runs. And, that's the philosophy. I don't love the philosophy. Jody can tell you that. I don't love it. I prefer to pay a little bit more attention to the run. One of my pet peeves is 4-3 versus 3-4. The Eagles never played a third linebacker. Never. Ever. Nakobe Dean was the third linebacker. He had 34 snaps as a rookie, and all of those were in blowouts.
Right.
It's not like they said
it wasn't
he was
like
on the
they
field.
added a third linebacker.
No.
He went in for somebody.
Yeah. So never, ever did they play a third linebacker. Now, most teams don't for significant snaps, but you might have 15%, 20% here and there in the modern game. A lot of people play loaded boxes, Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinators, Brian Flores, that Eagles fans would probably like a little bit more, that are a little bit more aggressive. They put more emphasis into it. The Eagles don't, and they're not going to put emphasis in it under Sean Desai. People can blame John. It's not going to change.
And Eagles fans probably know firsthand. I love Wink Martindale as a coordinator, but that philosophy, like you said, loading the box, that doesn't work well against a multifaceted offense like the Eagles. That's why the Eagles blew out the Giants pretty much every time they played them last year.
Yeah, so that's kind of the conversation. Well, they think this is the way to play modern football. They're probably right. I don't necessarily like it all the time, but I will acknowledge they're probably right. And you're going to give up some runs if you play this way.
Right. And
you just
my
are.
take is, and I get it, the Eagles were 14-3. They blew out their two playoff opponents in the NFC. You can't.
I got a frozen Jody.
Yeah,
you have a frozen Jody?
I have a frozen Jody too.
I never know. That's the problem with streaming. I never know who's frozen, who's not. So
especially here in my crib at 8 a.m., it's always up in the air. Like every time I sign on, I'm like, oh God, am I going to connect today? Am I going to connect? Well, I connected for a little bit, then I froze.
All right. Well, we'll see. Hopefully Jody can make it back and we'll keep the conversation going as we wait for Jody Mack. But I do want to bring up, because you did do your it is ranking season, Jeff, and you did your best duos for each team. And for the Eagles, you went, and I can't argue with you, you want Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. Did you have any debate going back and forth with AJ and Devontae? Because I think that
I did. I had a lot of debates on this because I do they have to be on both sides, or both players have to be on the same side of the ball. So I'm like, do I go Jalen AJ? Do I go AJ Devontae? Do I go Slay Bradbury? Do I go Sweat Reddick? But I looked at my list last year and I went Kelce Johnson. I said, you know what? None of them had a drop ball. So why don't we just go with the linchpin of the offense? Those two, the two guys on this team are probably going to be Hall of Famers.
Yeah. I don't know. We shifted Jody, if you didn't hear, to Jeff's best duos on every NFL team heading into 2023. For the Eagles, Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson. Here's why I'd go AJ Devontae. Everything's.
I can't argue with you on this, by the way.
But here's why. I mean, to me, and Ed Kratz and I are doing our top 25 Eagles, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but everybody's going to be really high on the list of these four particular players. My definition of best duo would be complementing each other. The offensive line always complements each other. But if it were center guard or guard tackle, I would have, a more, those guys are spaced out, Kelce and Johnson. Whereas AJ and Devontae are complementing each other on basically every play. That's the only reason I would default to AJ Devontae as the best duo on the Eagles. But was there any other team with so many candidates for this?
Not really. Like even a team like the Chiefs, it's Mahomes Kelce. That's just the obvious.
Easy.
I mean, they're the Super Bowl champ. Like Bills, Allen Diggs, Bengals, Burrow, Chase. Like the Eagles, it just, when people say the Eagles have a talented roster, they have a talented roster. I mean, we're not, giving you fool's gold here. Like I said, there were like 5 or 6 duos I could have picked out of the Eagles, and I don't think any Eagles fan would go, no, you're wrong. Or, why'd you go this one when you could have went this one? That's just, how loaded they are. I mean, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith was serious consideration for me because they both are top 10 receivers. Of the wide receiver duos last year, they were second in the NFL in receiving yards behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and they're the first pair of Eagles receivers to get 1,000 yards in a season. It's just incredible what they're able to do and how young they are. And I actually wrote about this yesterday, my standouts for minicamp, and I put Devonta Smith in there. I said I thought Devonta Smith had a great minicamp for the one little bit I saw him. I'm like, I don't care what the situation is. I think Devonta Smith's going to have a monster year for this football team.
I like your both of you guys look at the duos. I'd put Sweat and Hassan Reddick in there too, because as John was talking about complementing each other on each side of the defensive end, I'd probably have them three, and it probably Slay and Matt Patricia as number 4. See how that plays out this year.
How many Darius Slay, Matt Patricia questions do you think he's going to get this year?
Darius, well, I called him Darius. You can tell it's the off season. I'm a lot. They didn't give him to us in the off season, which is weird because Slay's one of the first guys to talk every week, and they were clearly keeping him away from us. I don't know why. He gets asked the questions once, and that's it, basically.
Yeah,
and he handled it well in Detroit when he was at Calvin Johnson's golf tournament. Somebody asked him out there, and he said, "Yeah,
he was open about it."
Yeah.
We'll see.
And he's a pro, and he'll just say, it's a business. We're working for the same goal. Got to be friends to work together. All that kind of good stuff.
Very professional
but
answer
we know Darius has got. All right, sorry if I call him Darius. Has a little thin skin. When people were trying to blame him for that 3rd and 30, he came out and defended himself immediately. So if anybody questions, he's going to defend himself.
And I wasn't there, so I can't answer this. It's just my opinion. Is that Matt Patricia was probably trying to motivate him and say, you're not in that category yet, and probably took it the wrong way. I mean, that it happens all the time. Jim Schwartz was trying to give DK Metcalf the biggest compliment in the world, comparing him to Calvin Johnson.
And Metcalf took it personally.
Yeah, and he took it personally. He thought he said, because he had no idea basically who Calvin Johnson was. And that's on DK Metcalf, not freaking Jim Schwartz trying to compliment him. You never know how people are going to take these things. Not everybody is a historian of the game. It's just a business of their doing, and they're very good at it.
Tyreek Hill just named his top 5 running backs of all time and didn't have Jim Brown on the list.
Who had top 5 and Jim Brown's not on the list?
Tyreek Hill did. He didn't even mention Jim Brown, but which is odd because I was going to say, well, maybe he doesn't know that far in history. But guess who's on there? Gale Sayers.
Brown was before him, but not that much. Shame on Tyreek Hill if that's the case. All right, Kerr, before we let you go, I got to go here with you because you and I are on the same page here. You're a fan of Hard Knocks. I'm a fan of Hard Knocks. It's now June 20th.
They have my proposal, Jody.
We still don't know who's going to be the Hard Knocks team. Come on. You're tight with Jeffrey. You can get Lori on the phone. Tell him. Volunteer. Philadelphia Eagles, the 2023 preseason Hard Knocks team. I need this, Jeff Kerr. I want this to happen. Let's talk it into existence. Can you get Jeff Lurie on the phone and talk him into it?
No. I wouldn't want this team anywhere near Hard Knocks. I said, HBO listened to my proposal. Bring the Detroit Lions back. They just said no.
The Lions said no. I did read that over the weekend. They actually
even the Lions don't want to do it. That. Nobody wants to do that.
And you know what? I love Hard Knocks, but it is outdated. Like I think the in-season one is better now.
It's still good. It should suck, but it doesn't. That tells you how good it is. By all rights, it means it should suck because it's been on so long and it's the same thing every year. It changed the name to protect the innocent, but I still love it every single year.
Well, I think the production values are off the charts and all that kind of stuff. I mean, they do a tremendous job with the production. I remember when they did that drone shot. I think that was Hard Knocks of the Cowboys facility.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, that stuff is off the charts. But these teams are so secretive. They don't. They have final say. They can cut stuff out. It's just not, unless you're going to make it real, unless you're going to make it a documentary, unless you're going to make people and say the NFL says, you know what, this is important to us. This is an important brand. Sorry, it's your turn. You have these rules. You pick a team. It's your turn. You got to let these guys have open access until they get to that point. And they're not going to get to that point. I don't care about the show. So, I mean, you're not seeing an unfiltered look into these teams. It's very guarded. They can say,
well, then
hey,
if it's
take
that
this
guarded,
out.
the Eagles should be willing to sign on. You're going to have control. Johnny Mack is not, you're telling me it's not really saying anything. Why can't it be the Eagles?
Here's the
Because
thing,
they don't want it. They don't want to do it, Jody. Now, if you want to say it's stupid, I'll agree with you that the Eagles are so secretive. I say it all the time. I think it's dumb, but they don't want to do it.
I mean, John, dude, you and I see that like during practices. It's strict. Put your phones away. Like, put them down.
Oh yeah.
You can't
we're doing install. Put your phones away.
Yeah, come on. I've heard it a couple of Kerr, did you not hear me? No, you didn't come my way. So
yeah.
Hey, they had a hell of a season last year. They were tied with 10 seconds to go in the Super Bowl. I'd rather celebrate it than hide it if I were the Eagles. But that's just me. I think things a little differently.
Go to the Chiefs because they're one of the few that still do an open training camp practice. I mean, fans film their training camp practices all day long, and they've asked Andy Reid why I don't go because I like it.
You bring that up. This drives me insane. Now the training camp practices have to be open by NFL rule, so we get to watch the entire training camp practice. The fans that are there, remember, there are a certain number of fans allowed in the Eagles practices. It's usually special days. It's usually, season ticket holders, things like that. I'm not talking about the Lincoln Financial Field practice. I'm talking about the NovaCare practices.
Right. By invitation.
Yeah. And we, the reporters, we get to film for about the first 15 minutes. And then it's, as you know, Jeff, it's put the phones away. Same thing with the fans. They tell them to put them away, but there's too many people. There's always people filming, and there's always people like the famous Jalen Reagor catch. We didn't film that. We were not allowed to film that.
I think a fan first got it.
Yeah, fan did. Because you can't police everybody. And it's so dumb. It's so dumb because you do have fans. And nobody's getting it. You think the Dallas Cowboys are sifting through? Oh, look at this fan video. Come on, but this is the way the league is.
Where a fan like videotapes just the whole practice. Do you really think teams are just going on that Twitter account? No.
It drives me nuts.
And honestly, I think it takes away the experience from the fans too, because that's what most people do now. They're on their phones. It's society now. There's nothing wrong with that.
Last time I'm going down this road today. Oh, I'll go down it again. Somebody's got to do Hard Knocks. So it might as well be the Eagles. I know, John, what you guys say. The Eagles don't want to do it. I get it. They don't want to do it. I'm trying to sway them. I'm trying to talk them into it. I'm trying to make some sense that it would be more of an upside than a downside because they can control it after the fact.
All you're going to get, if the Eagles are on Hard Knocks, all you're going to get is the standard is the standard and rent is due every day.
Well,
that's all you're getting.
Pretty much.
I'd love to let Jalen Hurts play that starring role on Hard Knocks because he is different than everybody else.
They should go to the Bills because I want more inside depth on what the heck Stephon Diggs is doing.
If they get the Bills week what week does Buffalo come here?
12.
It's
even know
mid-season.
yet.
It's in that
It's right after the Chiefs, I think. Isn't
Chiefs.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right,
think
so
it's
about
back-
week 10, week
So
11.
wait,
That's when I'll
week
start
12,
worrying about the
week
Buffalo
12.
Bills from an Eagles standpoint when they're coming here to the link. Jeff Kerr, always a pleasure. Sorry, it's not the winter, so your bowling average is lingering a little bit. But I have faith you'll get it up, even though you're going to go into some very air-conditioned bowling center near you soon.
Tonight.
I love that. You going tonight?
Yeah, I got practice for nationals. I'm going to Reno in 2 weeks, so that's all I care about right now.
Oh,
Pouring out there.
yeah.
Ooh, a big shot going out to Reno.
Reno 911, one of my favorite shows, underrated show. Week 12, Buffalo, November 26th. So
That'll be a big one.
Thanksgiving-ish time.
425. It's the week after Thanksgiving, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well, Thanksgiving week, I guess. The Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Sunday.
We know you can't go Reno 911 while bowling. Can you go Reno 811? Can you bowl 811?
Not on that shot.
Okay.
Maybe Reno 511.
511. That's not good, Kurt. You better be better than that.
That's a
Would
bronze
take a 6
shot.
or a 7, if not an 8.
I'm bowling where Walter Ray Williams Jr. dominates. Just think about that.
Who the hell is Walter Ray Williams?
Yeah,
One of the greatest bowlers of all time.
Yeah.
Pete Weber. Do you know who he is?
I know
that
Pete
him I've
Weber.
heard of.
I know Pete Weber.
Yeah,
Ernie
Him
McCracken.
and Ernie McCracken. I
Yeah.
got those
Oh, of
two
course
guys.
I know
Yeah.
Ernie McCracken.
Best bowler of all time, Ernie McCracken.
All right, Jeff Kerr, always a pleasure. Thanks, brother. We'll get you back again soon. Now, when are you going to Reno so we know we can't have you that week?
July 3rd. July 3rd I'm leaving. So that week.
Write
July
that
4th.
down. Kerr's out. Johnny
July
Mac.
3rd.
Can't
I think
be-
that's a Monday,
be
isn't
calling
it?
him.
It's a
July
Monday.
4th is on a Tuesday, I believe.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be there all week.
And tip
Chance.
your waiters and waitresses. That's Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports here with us on Birds 365. All right,
Thanks,
Jody
Jeff.
Mac, Johnny Mac coming back. We still got an hour left to go. Oh, the Prince of Darkness is joining us today. Your friend and mine, Bob Groats, coming up in hour number 2, so don't even think about streaming out.